Thank you. Well, it is really an honor to be your host for the Comedy Central roast of JavaScript frameworks. It's really great to be here. Richard, thank you so much for being here for Elm to make Ember look popular in comparison. Stephen, the talk on Angular is really fantastic. I really love Angular. It's definitely the framework for people who thought enterprise Java beans is almost too simple, right? React, Andrew, great presentation on React. If you guys aren't familiar with React, it's a library for arguing with your team members about which NPM packages to use. Really great. Vue, I'm really looking forward to this. They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery. Consider me flattered. But if I wanted a knockoff, I'd just go down to Canal Street. Okay, all right. So Joe asked me to be nice. I'm just kidding. It's really great to be here. We had such an awesome day yesterday. I live in New York City, which is the greatest city in the world for JavaScript. Rich Harris actually works just down the street from me. We have coffee all the time and talk about how bad JSX is. And my wife is a React developer, so things get awkward, but also, variety is a spice of life. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about Ember. You're already seen and you're going to see a lot of talks on some really awesome frameworks and libraries. So why would you ever use Ember? Who is Ember for? So I think that Ember is for people who never stop shipping. It's for people who know that the value in what we do is making other people's lives better, not refactoring build configurations. People who believe in delivering great products, delivering great experiences, and people who have disdain for coding's sake. And if that sounds like you, I'd like to give you a few reasons for why you might consider using Ember for your next web application. Some of the best product teams in the world use Ember. With a scalable UI architecture baked in from the start, you'll be working with the same patterns and the same tools that these organizations and more use to ship great products every day. I want to extract, this is actually from Reddit. This is from our JavaScript. It's probably the nicest thing anyone ever said about Ember and our JavaScript. This is from Gavin Joyce, who is a manager of engineering at Intercom. He said, "We've been using Ember at Intercom for 4.5 years. It powers the web application that our customers spend a large proportion of their day in." So a few highlights for us about using Ember. The first is that our code base has never been healthier. It continues to improve as Ember's conventions improve. We're also running close to the latest version of Ember, and we generally follow the Ember 6-week release cycle. New engineers are productive in a very short time. They usually ship something to production on their first day, and they ship their own feature within the first week. They also release a continuous stream of features, so they never have to pause feature development, and they get to continue getting faster while they raise the quality bar. And I think this one's the most important one for me. The last one is that people love working there. People love having this well-factored code base that isn't a sprawling legacy mess after 4.5 years, which is, I think, pretty incredible and not what you'd expect in JavaScript. So knowing what we know now, if we could go back to the start, we would certainly choose Ember as the framework for our large customer-facing app again. So I think that's really heartening, and I think that's an example of the kind of experience people have using Ember for the long term, not building disposable software, but building applications that last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even longer. So I think Ember is known for the curated set of tools that you get out of the box with each app. We don't have a ton of time with you here today, so I'll focus on just these last two. How many of you use Travis CI to do your CI testing? Okay, awesome. So every time you use Travis, you're using an Ember app. Here is a test from a real-world application, Travis CI, that verifies that they are showing this useful empty state whenever a user goes and views a repository that doesn't have any builds. Now, because Ember is opinionated with what you get out of the box, we can provide some really great test helpers that seamlessly integrate with things like routing, data fetching, user interaction. So you can verify that the features that you think you're delivering are actually working end to end. And I should note that this example, even though it's using QUnit, these helpers work with whatever testing library or framework you prefer. whether it's Mocha or whatever else. And every Ember app out of the box comes with this really awesome test harness to run these acceptance tests. And I just think it's really cool to see your tests interacting with your app live, just how a user would use your app, right? And we think it's really important for teams to test more than just individual components and to test features working end to end. Because too many front-end teams today, they don't do this because they have to spend days or weeks wiring everything up. Having these end-to-end tests built in means that the Ember community has a really strong testing culture, and most teams do it because it's so easy to get started. So Ember's been around for a long time. It's like 2011. There's been like 7 million new JavaScript frameworks in the meantime. You might think, why even care about Ember? It must be old and clunky. But just because we care about API stability doesn't mean that we don't get to take advantage of new language features. So let's take a look at Ember's component API just as an example. So this is the simplest possible component in Ember. It's just a template that contains static HTML, team template. By turning this HTML snippet into a component, we can reuse it many times all over our application. This is a hello component and we're invoking it just like this. We can call it all over our app. You can also pass arguments to a component. So you can customize how it behaves each time you invoke it. So this is similar to like props in React, for example. The at prefix is what we call an arg that you pass to a component. And so every time you call it, you can see that in your template, you reference the arg and it shows up in the output. So one thing I really like about how we do components in Ember is that we disambiguate between component arguments and HTML attributes. So by adding this attributes syntax, or splattributes as we affectionately call it, users of my component can provide attributes that should be reflected into the DOM. So this turns out to be really important for improving accessibility in your components across the app, because people can add things like ARIA attributes without your component having to hard code support. And of course, sometimes you can't do everything in your template. So we have this really nice modern component API that's using new JavaScript features. This is using classes and a new proposal called decorators, which is stage 2 in TC39. Stage 3, please, 2 months, please. And I just think like this is such a nice modern API. It's hard to believe that Ember predates Backbone, right? The fact that we've been able to evolve to take advantage of these new features, I think, says a lot about the process that we use. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of people tell you that templates are less powerful. They're like training wheels until you've reached level 19 of enlightenment of doing everything in JavaScript. I get it. And I'll admit it. There are really nice benefits to using JSX and putting everything in your JavaScript. And a lot of that conversation is about performance, right? I think JSX has a lot of downsides, but most of the conversation is about performance and whether you can do really advanced optimizations like we saw with Svelte. But I think that there are really important usability benefits to templates as well. They allow you to think in not just JavaScript, but just HTML, rather than having to do this mental transformation of the HTML that you want to write in your head into this embedded XML in your JavaScript. So, for example, in our previous example, we had this root div element in our template. But in an Ember component, if we don't want any root element at all, we just want text, no problem. We just delete the div. We can even have a mix of elements and text nodes without having to learn this proprietary fragment syntax. We just write the HTML like we would write in an HTML document. Now, let's take it a step further. In Ember, valid HTML is a valid template. So that includes things that are notorious for being hard to work with in JSX, things like SVG. So in this example, imagine that we have this inline SVG that displays a red rectangle. And let's imagine it's a little bit more complicated than this. And we want to repeat the same rectangle many different places within our SVG without having to ship that code over and over again in the browser. Well, SVG allows you to place the same element multiple times using this use tag. So first we create this rect element, we give it the red box ID, and then we can use a use tag with the xlink href attribute to tell the browser, hey, just take that rect that you already rendered and render it again, and maybe we're going to override a few attributes, in this case like the X and Y. So simple enough, you can type this code into your browser, it'll work. But if we try this in React, we get an error at compile time because it doesn't support namespaced attributes. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, yeah, it's kind of an edge case, seems okay. I'll just Google it, and I'll find this SVG to JSX converter, and that's going to take care of it for me. Actually, I guess not. So now there's like a feature of the web platform that you are just unable to use because of the constraints of JSX. So what's cool about Ember's Glimmer rendering engine and many of the other libraries and frameworks that use templates is that not only do inline SVGs just work without you having to do any kind of mental gymnastics, you can also bind their attributes like any other HTML attribute. So if the trade-off is learning this small bit of new template syntax in exchange for getting access to all of the features of the web platform, for me, that's an easy trade-off to make. Okay, so that's the fun part of the presentation. So next, just real quick, I want to talk about something that I think is really underappreciated outside the Ember community, which is our ecosystem of Ember add-ons. So probably, if you're a JavaScript developer, you've been in the position where you've been like, I need to go grab this dependency off NPM, but I don't know if it's well maintained. I don't know if it's a high quality add-on. I don't know if the maintainer is going to be around for a long time, or if it's going to be like a Rich Harris project that he's going to get bored after a year. Okay, all right. That was a low blow. So you probably had to make this choice between multiple packages with no clear guidance about which one is better. So what's cool about Ember add-ons is you never have to assess the quality of your project's dependencies on your own. The Ember Observer website offers up-to-date rankings with that make it really easy to see what an add-on's position within the community. And add-ons are also helpfully categorized, so you can discover new add-ons that solve different problems that maybe you didn't even know that you had. And within a category, add-ons are sorted by score and popularity, so you're not getting the dregs of NPM. You're getting stuff that's high quality and other people are using and relying on and contributing back to. And if you look at any particular add-on, it has a score associated with it. And that score is based on metrics like having great documentation, how recently it had a release, and it runs automated tests of the packages against multiple versions of Ember. So you can see on the side there, Ember compatibility, it will tell you what version ranges it's compatible with. And most add-ons are compatible with a very wide range. And this means that you can be confident that this dependency that you reach for is not going to become this hidden liability in the future. And because our community uses standardized tooling and architecture, Ember add-ons provide capabilities that go way beyond your typical NPM package. So with all this power wrapped up in a single install command and no additional build tool code or configuration needed, I think you'll start to wonder, like, how can I ever go back to wiring up all of these dependencies by hand again? So lastly, I just need to say something about the Ember community. Ember's first commit was all the way back in 2011, but today our community is more active than ever. Whether it's one of our annual conferences, meetup groups around the world, or initiatives like Women Helping Women, which helps mentor women to be involved in speaking engagements. We work really hard to foster a friendly, professional, and welcoming environment for everyone. So this is just a small sample of some of the places you might see our mascot turn up in. For us, who could forget the Salt Lake City Tomster? Have you heard about Ember's plan for your life? Thank you. So your business can bet on Ember because we have an open governance model that allows anyone to contribute and influence the direction of the framework. So no one company controls Ember. None of these meetings happen behind closed doors. Instead, contributors from all over the world join together to collaborate openly. And you'll never be surprised by sudden changes in Ember's direction or compatibility because everything goes through an RFC process. Even core team members, even me, I helped create the framework, even I have to do everything through an RFC for any kind of substantive change. And anyone in the community during that process can raise concerns, suggest alternatives, even create their own counterproposal. And it's not just the big technical changes you get a say in. It's stuff like small API deprecations to even things that aren't even code related, like community decisions like what chat platform we should use. So if you're the kind of person who never stops shipping, I hope you will consider using Ember for your next project. We have a vibrant, welcoming, and helpful community that would love to help you get started. And once you're there, you'll be in really good company. Thank you.